Hello everybody, this is Lila in Hawaii. I'm making some French-inspired things with red ticking and red fabrics. I like to do that from time to time, particularly if I've travelled over to France. Sort of gets me all inspired again. And I sort of circle around with doing embroidery or doing sort of more rustic, I would say, sort of market or country crafts from France. And so I'm going to make a bag, and it's a bag that could hold all kinds of things like pencils, a pair of scissors would fit in it, just whatever you'd like, notebook, maybe a cell phone. And for this I used an old piece of linen that I bought. It was actually a French tablecloth, one of those with the red stripe, which I've long ago used. But what I like about them is they often, this is very old, so it had this tag on it that had something tatted on the end of it in red, like a little logo or something like that. I think it's actually the mark from where it may have been laundered. So I like to keep that. I'm going to keep that there and do something with that. But also, it had a little red thing on it, so I'm going to do a little red design on it as well. Now I've put a little bit of a collage here that I'm going to apply in a minute. I'm going to put a little bit of lace on the bottom. And I've got an old rusty key that I'm going to put there. But the main thing about a lot of the items I see when I'm in France, particularly in what they call white goods or linen goods, is the hemstitching. I don't know if you can see that. Anyway, it's kind of hard to get hemstitching, and it's well, kind of a rarity, and particularly if you do it by hand, which I remember having to learn as a child, pull the threads out and then hemstitch. Well, there's an easier way to do that, and I'm just finishing up. I'm only going to do one side. I've hemstitched the one side. This is a piece folded, by the way, so it's going to be the pocket. The sides are going to be sewn up, and I'm going to hemstitch just across the top, because in the original it was hemstitched up the sides and across the top. So I'll go to the machine and I'll kind of show you, if I can, how I do that. It's real quick. I have this really an old Pfaff, a 7570, and it has a bunch of drawn thread work or hemstitching stitches, and there's one called 111, which is the one I'm going to use. So I'll program 111, press OK. And you have to use a fine white thread in the top, fine white thread in the bottom, and more of an applique foot. And this is set at 30 stitches lengthwise, and widthwise it's 40. I could have made it bigger. Anyway, I'm going to see if I can just stitch across the top. Just sort of pull the threads to start it. Normally on a fine linen, what you would do is fold over and press it with an iron, maybe spray starch it, and do this hem stitching, probably through the double thickness. But this is a very coarse old linen from France, and I don't need to do that. Oh, the other thing that you have to have is a wing needle. So that's whether you know what a wing needle is, but you can buy them. It's like a little blade, like a little knife blade almost that goes in there. So that's what you do for the top, what do you call that again? Hem stitching, that's what it is. I knew that. Anyway, it does make a hole in there. You could draw the threads out if you wanted to, but I don't do that. And if the fabric's an even weave, it'll come out nicely like that. Now, you can use the wing needle to do straight stitching to sew up the sides. The first thing I'm going to do is, I think at this point I'm going to remove the wing needle and go back to the ordinary needle. That's what a wing needle looks like. and it is not necessary to do anything, any other adjustments. If you want things to pull a little tighter, you might want to tighten the tension a little bit, but that's all. I like to play with my machine with all the bits that come with it. I think it's such a shame if you don't, and you'd be surprised. I've made lace with a wing needle by using a piece of fine organdy or something like that. It's really cool, it really is, to use all the bits. And if you do crazy quilting, there are a lot of stitches that mimic crazy quilting that you can use, like feather stitch and so forth. Okay, so there we go. So now I have gone back to the regular setup. I haven't got the different foot on. Oh, actually, I do have a different foot. I have the foot is a 2, number 2. It's not the regular foot. The regular foot is very similar. This is the regular foot. It's called a 0A. But this is kind of the applique foot. I don't know why. If you go to the, when you look at your machine, you can go to the, press on information, and it'll tell you what foot and the tension and all the rest of the stuff. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do put the applique in place, but I am going to do it in red eventually. So what I want to do is just sort of place it and sew around just to kind of hold it in place. So I'll place that on that half of it. And I'm going to stitch the parts that I want white, and then I'll switch to red thread. And when I make these little patches, like this is a little Paris patch, I usually make the stitch a little bit longer, and I go around a couple of times. And I've made a little sandwich with a piece of scrim underneath, just a frayed piece of scrim. And when this whole thing is completed, I'm going to coffee dye it, just to give it a more aged look. I'm going to leave the edges raw. I'm not going to turn them in and turn it inside out like you would normally do. I sort of like that look. But I do like to play with overlapping layers, frayed edges, a little bit of red, maybe ticking, maybe some other country fabric. You see this more in Provence. Okay, so I've applied the patch with white, so that's going to stay white. I'm going to go around this with red. That's not going to be very helpful there. The only thing else I'm going to do is I'm going to add this piece of cut-off crochet doily. And I don't like to add pieces like this when they look like, oh, she put a doily under there. So I like to, you know, this is obviously a doily. So I like to use this side, this piece. I'm going to put this in here. Now it doesn't say doily to me. Now before I sew the side seams up, I'm going to try and find some little red something to put on there. You see, that's where I'm at now. Of course, I will be cutting off these threads where I passed over the label, like that. I'll be cutting those off. And what I really want to do is just leave this sticking up, so I'll just do something right there. And I have little single stitches, let's see. And sometimes they don't work out too well because of the size of this. You know, it just slips off. I'm going to try one stitch 138, if anyone has this machine. And I press the single pattern button. No, I don't think that's going to work. I think it's going to be too big. Okay. I'll try 158. And I will make it smaller. Single pattern. I'll probably mess it up. Actually, what I should do, and I often do this when it's a little thing like that, so I put a piece, I keep this paper for all sorts of things like this, adding machine paper. All my machine embroidery, I use that. works. Yay! Did better than I thought. Pretty good, pretty good. It is number 158 if you have this machine. Single pattern, and I did reduce the size of it to 7.5 width. To me that looks tree French. I don't know where my little scissors are, they vanished. Okay, so this is how it looks now. I will be going in and tidying up later, and tidying up the threads. And it's great for scissors, great for, I live in Hawaii, so it's great for chopsticks. It's great for pencils. It's great for cell phones. The last thing I'm going to do is I am going to put this little key right there. However, just to give you the idea and just to sort of set it up, I'm going to put a little bit of this on there, a little bit of tacky glue, figure out that I want it there, and then, as I say, I'll be putting some twine in it later on when it's dried. So there it is. That's a little French pouch, even with a little French image there, a little thing there. Perfect. This was a stamp I used here that I bought in France, and it's probably available here too, but I just happened to buy it there. And then these are raw edges, and I'm hoping they're going to fray more. And then, of course, the other item that I did was just on two sides I did the hem stitching, because that's the way I saw it. I think the reason it was like that was it was cut off an old piece of linen. I saw it in one of the markets in a booth, and I liked the idea that it was not symmetrical. I like that idea. And I thought, ooh, and I hadn't played with my wing needle for a long time, so there it is. I hope you enjoyed that. And I do like to hear from you on my little site there and on my blog as well.